everybody. Ron Wildman here on Middle Georgia Spotlight. Most of our guests are special, but I will call this one extra special. This one occasion only. Don't let it go to your head.
Well, you're kind.
The original host of our program, and he's back in town after an absence, former Mayor Jack Ellis. You qualify as a guest.
Well, good to see you, Ron. Thanks for having me as a guest. And let me say to the audience as well as you, thank you so much for taking this program. Of course, it was never doubt in anyone's mind what Ron Wildman can do with a TV mic and in front of a camera. But, you know, I watch you from afar. I watch every program on YouTube, on YouTube in Africa, and you have some great guests. I got a lot of good information, very informative, and I learned so much from you every time I see you interview someone.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. You came some 6,000 miles to get back home.
Sure did, and you know, I was really concerned about, you know, you have to take your COVID test before you leave, but still, they said it's kind of hard to social distance on a 777 when all the seats are full, and that's what they were coming back. Now, when I went over, I went in August, left in August, right after the election, had an assignment, and you know, we were spaced out. I went over on Delta, we had space, but coming back, I came back on Ethiopian Airways, and I guess they were trying to, you know, make up for some lost revenues. They had almost every seat sold on that plane. But we had to wear masks, wash your hands, but of course, you got to eat, so you got to take your mask off. So, you know, the chance you take when you fly.
Roll that wheel.
Exactly.
Where do you go over there?
Well, I go to Uganda, Ron. I served since the time I left office, and since 2008, I've served as the Honorary Consul General for the country of Uganda for the state of Georgia, which means I'm their diplomat in the state of Georgia. They've given me South Carolina and Alabama because we don't have one there. But I go there for several reasons. This time it was part of an election campaign. They had asked me to come and look at how they campaign, unofficial, I guess you would call it an unofficial election observer, because they had the presidential campaign and the MP, a member of parliament was all going on at that time when I was there.
They described this last election here as kind of raucous, but it didn't compare to anything over there, did it?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, one of the main opponent of the president who appoints me, I'm part of not part of the government, I'm appointed by the foreign minister of that government, of the Uganda current government, which they call the NRM. And he was challenged by a young man, 38, 39 years old. I've interviewed him on this program, as a matter of fact, there in Uganda, called Bobby Wine. And he was really contesting. The current president has been in office since 1986. So he's been around a while. But he's elected every 5 years. Now, I don't want anyone to think that now people say the election is not fair, just like President Trump said this one wasn't fair. But every year, every 5 years, he wins with about 58 to 60% of the vote. But this time he had a real tough challenge, a young man named Bobby Wine, who had been an entertainer, but he's a member of parliament. And they had a rally, and of course, had all of his people in the street. But the current regime said you can't have rallies because of COVID, you have to get out of the streets, and they continued to rally, and lo and behold, 59 people were murdered, were shot because of protests. And so that's what you call a real protest.
A rough one.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you are over there, what do you do?
Well, I do several things. Number one, I've been working with a mayor on an island called Bugala Island. It's a beautiful island in the middle of Lake Victoria. And I was asked to help him with a strategic plan, a tourism development plan. That's one of the things I was working on. But then the elections also, they wanted me to be an unofficial observer for the election. Then I got caught up in a campaign of a member of parliament, a young lady and a young man that I knew well, and I would wind up advising them unofficially, which was a no-no in and of itself. I should have been neutral. But one of them won, one lost, so maybe they fought me for the one that lost and not give me credit for the one that won. But I was involved in politics supposedly observing and advising as to how campaigns should be run as opposed to helping any individual candidate.
Now, are you comfortable over there? I mean, you've been going there for several years now. Do you feel like it's like home away from home?
It really is. The people are so good to me. I mean, it's some, you know, of course, Africa is a kind of a dichotomy, if you will. You know, it's two Africas. They're abject poverty in some places, and then, of course, there are very wealthy people living in very, very expensive houses in some areas. So you have the rich, the poor. You don't have a large middle class. That's what Africa is struggling with. And of course, this COVID has wreaked havoc on the economy there, because they've taken this thing so, when I say they've taken it seriously, not that we haven't taken it seriously, but they have implemented measures that they don't allow anything for chance. For instance, you can't walk into any store, any public place without a mask, without your temperature being checked, and without sanitizing, that they sanitize you, be it a supermarket, be it a corner store, no matter where you go. And of course, since last March, they have been on lockdown at 9 p.m., curfew every day. So
I understand they really enforce that.
They do, for several reasons. Number one, it makes good sense, public policy, public health. But the main reason, the healthcare system is very fragile. So if you wind up with 5 or 6 people needing a ventilator, maybe there's only one ventilator, you know, in the entire hospital, or don't have all the necessary equipment to treat. So they want to make sure they prevent this thing from spreading. And to be honest with you, Ron, I was on an island for the most time. I spent time on an island, Bugala Island, in the middle of Lake Victoria, and there was not one recorded case of COVID on that island. Now in the big cities, of course, but on that island, not one recorded case. Now, whether there was some there weren't reported, there was not one known case of COVID on that island, which I thought was amazing.
I understood it came a little later to Africa as it did us in Europe, but it finally got there, and it's pretty much after you got there when it kicked in.
It did, because what happened, once they closed the borders, like Uganda, for instance, closed their airport in March and didn't open until 1 October.
You were supposed to go earlier in the year.
Exactly, I was supposed to go early. So they still wanted me to come, so they arranged for me to fly into Nairobi, into Kenya. So I flew from here to Paris, Nairobi, and then someone picked me up, which is a 16-hour road trip. I mean, it's not interstates. A 16-hour road trip to get to the Ugandan border. And then someone from the foreign minister met me there to get me across the border, didn't stamp my passport, and didn't make me quarantine, which I thought was, they said, well, we know you're okay, you had your COVID. Of course, I did get my COVID test from Mercer Medicine before I left, and it was free. Coming back, I had to get one I had to pay in order to get back. So the point I'm making is that it was a challenge getting there, but once they opened the airport and the 1st of October, it was easy to get back, you know.
Now, we're getting vaccinations now. Are they available over there?
They're not. Not in Uganda. Now, Rwanda, which is a much smaller country, where they had the genocide a few years ago, you probably know about Rwanda, it's next door. But it's only 12 million people in Rwanda, and they have cut a deal with Belgium, and there used to be a Belgian colony. I think they have cut a deal with Belgium. I think it's easier to probably facilitate for 12 million people as opposed to 50 million. Uganda has about 50 million people. And Rwanda is a richer country than Uganda. Uganda is a low-income country, so the affordability, I know President Biden has said that he's going to have 500 million in what we don't use, the surplus that he will give away. So I trust that we are lobbying now that some of that will be sent to not only Africa, but to Uganda and in particular, so we see what happens.
Well, the African continent as a whole, how are they approaching this?
You know, it's here again, it's a mixed bag. For instance, South Africa is, I mean, it has just wreaked havoc on South Africa. that's South Africa is kind of a first world country.
We think of that as a up-to-date.
Yeah, it is. The infrastructure compared to other
yeah.
African countries is a first world country, but they have kind of put their head in the sand, if you will, and said, "Oh, it'll be okay. We don't want to shut down the economy." And it did them exactly what it did to Italy and Spain when they didn't adhere to certain rules. And so people then start saying, we don't want anyone from South Africa coming to Kenya or coming to Uganda, or going to Nigeria or Ghana. So South Africa has been kind of a poster child in Africa for what you don't do with this COVID. And it has been very devastating on the economy. Unemployment is just through the roof and things like that. And there's no COVID stimulus money coming. So when you close your business there, if you're out of work, you're just out of work. You don't get anything.
Well, on top of that, South Africans, when they travel, they spend money in these other nations.
Exactly.
And they weren't doing it or couldn't do it.
They couldn't. And so I think and now South Africa, that new strand that's been
South African strand.
Yes, and it's a British. They say it's also in UK, or they kind of shut it down there. But I guess because of the relationship between Johannesburg and Cape Town and London, there's so many flights going between those two countries.
So how have you handled your situation in all this?
Well, I have.
You're of that age where they want to give you one.
Yeah, exactly. I celebrated my 75th birthday around there.
Oh, my goodness.
But guess when it was? January the 6th. So as I was celebrating my birthday on January the 6th, people were trying to take over the Capitol on January the 6th. That was the day. So everyone will always know my birthday going forward, just like 9/1/9/11. We will always refer to 1/6. I guess that's what people are referring to, January 6th. So yes, so therefore I did take necessary precaution. But here again, I was on an island where no one was worried about COVID. So if I had on a mask, I would be the only one. And why are you wearing this mask? No COVID. So after a while, I got very comfortable and took my mask off, took a chance, and thank God I was safe, got back and got my first shot. So I'm ready for my second one. So I encourage everyone to get the shot. I know that a lot of people in the black community are hesitant to get vaccinated for a whole lot of reasons. But this time around, I think this is the best thing to do.
What makes you feel secure about that?
About getting the shot this time? Because what we are looking at, Ron, we're looking at from a historical perspective. We always refer back to the Tuskegee experiment, the syphilis experiment, where what they did to African Americans. But we have to realize that was a different time. There were not black scientists and black doctors at that time. Now we have black doctors, black scientists. The guy at the CDC director recently, the Surgeon General, is an African American. So, I think what it gives a level of comfort to all of us. Not that I think that Caucasian people now would do something like that, but they couldn't get away with that. You couldn't get away with that type of thing anymore. Too many eyes, too much technology, and the thing has been run through so many different tests and retests. So I just feel comfortable that we have a vaccine that's not going to hurt people. But then again, people will say, yeah, that's what they thought in Europe, but now they have ceased taking it there because of blood clots. But I still think our health system is, even though people talk about it, I think we still have one of the best R&D, research and development.
Well, reaction to anything is different to different people anyway, no matter what we do. Yeah. I mean, so we all take a chance to a degree of having some type of reaction possibly. Now, when do you get your second vaccination shot?
I get it on the 7th of April. I will get it on the 7th of April. I'm looking forward to getting it. The VA had scheduled me to come to Atlanta, so you can come to Atlanta and get one, walk in. I figured right here in Macon, I was able to get into the health department. Why not get one at our local health department, which I believe in our local health department, so I don't want to go running off someplace else and get a shot if I can get one here.
You know when I get my second one?
When?
April Fool's Day.
April 1st. Well, great.
Well, you've been keeping up with things on this side to a degree, I imagine, politics, government, and everything else that's going on?
I have, and I even voted. I didn't vote. Unfortunate, my overseas ballot for the Senate race, I wasn't able to get that in. I regretted that, and of course, I said, now if I wake up tomorrow morning and someone lost by one vote, I'm going to really, really be angry. But yeah, I have taken. I did have Wi-Fi most of the time, and satellite TV. That's how I was able to watch you on YouTube there on Wi-Fi. So I was keeping up pretty much. There were times now during the presidential campaign there, the election, the day of the election, which was the 15th of January, 14th of January, day before Dr. King's birthday. They shut the internet down in the entire country for like 4 days, so no one could communicate outside. So whatever happened,
they could do that.
He did.
They did.
They can do that. That was by order of the president. Because his reasoning was that so much misinformation is being put out. That was his reason. There's so much misinformation on the internet that he didn't want any trouble, so therefore the best thing to do is just shut it down. Now, you can argue with that,
It might make sense, but can you imagine how irate people would be over here
if
that happened?
I told him you couldn't get away with it. He couldn't do that here. I mean, it would just be impossible. Can you imagine shutting down the internet for 5 days now? For 1 hour?
It'd drive us nuts. What would we do with ourselves?
Exactly. But that's, it worked out okay. The election's behind us there. We have a new president. Of course, it's been contested by the one who lost, just as President Trump contested this one, said it was rigged, said there was a lot of ballot stuffing going on, but the Supreme Court, it went to the Supreme Court there in Uganda, and they ruled that the election was fair.
So similar to
Very similar.
us and
Very
them.
similar.
Yeah.
Other than shutting down the internet and
Yeah.
firing a lot of live bullets. Thank God our government didn't fire any live bullets at anyone.
Well, we didn't shut down the internet, but they pulled some folks off, like the President Trump. They took him off the internet.
I heard they blocked his Twitter account.
Yeah, they took that big Twitter account away, and from other folks too. So you got more similarities here than maybe meets the eye.
Well, I disagree with that too, though. I just think that, if you are saying something that's very inflammatory, maybe they should flag it and take it, not let that go out. But to ban someone from a platform, that would be like you banning me from ever being on TV, ever being on this program. I would be against that.
Well, we're in a book thing too over here. They're in effect not selling books, certain books over here. Like Amazon, they have such control on this. They're picking and choosing what they're going to sell and what they don't sell. And I remember back several years ago in Chile, back when Nixon was president, that's how far back it goes. There was a general over there, and I see it today. There was a fire, and he's throwing books in this fire.
Pinochet.
Yeah. And laughing about it, because but we're burning books at a different way. It's a high-tech book burning over here.
And I don't like that either, especially I'm writing a book. And
yours could be the first one in there.
And let me thank the people at Mercer Press and President Underwood who made it possible they're going to publish my book. And I did some work on that while I was there as well. So hopefully I'm trying to get it to the editor, and next year will be our 200th anniversary for Macon and Bibb County's anniversary. So I'm trying to make sure it's published by that it's hit the stand at our 200th anniversary.
Don't want to spoil it. Don't tell me the ending now, but tell me a little bit about the book.
Well, the book is entitled, the working title, and I think I'm going to stick with it, is called My Unlikely Journey, from the cotton fields of West Bibb County to Macon City Hall as the first African-American mayor, first and only, it's sad to say. It's quite a journey. It's like, even though it's a few miles as the crow flies from Chambers Road to City Hall, but as a boy growing up on that farm, it was like 1,000,000 miles away as far as I didn't even know where City Hall was. So it's my unlikely journey. So it's a memoir. I chronicle my years. My father was a sharecropper. I come from a family of 13 children. There was 12 siblings. My father worked hard. Drove a truck, worked at Robins Air Force Base, worked at Camp Wheeler during the war, and then from there got his own little farm and 8 sisters, 4 brothers, going in the Army, serving 2 years in Vietnam, after that living in overseas, and then becoming mayor. So it's a lot in there. So it's not a tell-all book, but it's a book about overcoming adversities. It's a book also about taking advantage of opportunities that was afforded. The military did so much for me, Ron. I was in the 60s. Macon was very turbulent in 61, 62, 63. I joined the Army in 63. And I said I would never come back here again. That Macon was just such a bad place that I would never live here again. And after I got in the military and enlightened myself and became a student of the world, if you will, and I realized that your change will come, but you have to be involved in change. You just can't run away from change. Now, I tried to effect change as a teenager here. I got arrested like everyone else, got chased away from trying to go into Crystal Burger. But, those days are behind us, thank God. And some people would like to bring them back, I think, and I hope it's very few people who want to bring them back, but they're behind us. It was a time, but we can't forget it, that happened, but we can't live it every day. And I think I tried to show this when we bought the terminal station and I uncovered the colored waiting room sign. A lot of people, black and white, questioned the wisdom of that it would open old wounds. And what I said to that, if there's a wound there, if it's covered up, we need to heal the wound. Because if we keep letting wounds be covered up, they'll fester and stuff will keep popping up every now and then. So we got to get to a point that we can heal. And what that says, that colored waiting room that says, well, number one, it meant for it to be there always. It's in stone, So when people say it's not in stone, that's etched in stone. So it's not to embarrass anyone. It's not to embarrass our city. It wasn't to make anyone feel guilty. It's say, that's where we've come from. That's how far we have come. We have come so far that as a young African American going off to fight for this country, I went through the colored waiting room to get on the Nancy Haynes train to go to Atlanta to get inducted. But a few years later, well, several years later, 3 decades later, here I was, an African American mayor, uncovering that sign. And I was in charge of that, bought that terminal station for the city. So that shows improvement. That shows that we can move to this quote unquote perfect union, a more perfect union. It never said we're going to have a perfect union. It said a more perfect union. So I think if we all strive on a daily basis to have a more perfect union, realizing that we have our warts, we have our faults, and that we just have to do the best we can going forward, because a lot of people thinking that America's best days are behind, especially overseas. You hear people, oh, America, and they hear the internet, the charity and all that, and they say that we are this, we're that. But, it's still a country that I fought for, a country that I was prepared to die for. And even though I'm an old guy now, 75, but if they said someone was coming to our shores and if they would give me a rifle, I would take my place again to help defend what we have here in America.
You were a platoon sergeant?
I was a platoon sergeant in Vietnam, the 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles, we call it. We were all paratroopers then, and now it's Air Mobile, I think. But yeah, I went to Vietnam with the 101st from Fort Campbell in 1967, right after coming from Detroit, where we had riots in the street. Now imagine this. Some members of the 101st, we were preparing to go to Vietnam, but the riots broke out in Detroit. They sent us there to help put down the riots, came back to Fort Campbell, trained for a couple more, went to Vietnam. When I was in Vietnam, early 68, Dr. King got killed, America was on fire. So it was a lot of conflict going on with me as a young 22-year-old platoon sergeant leading black and white young men. And all this stuff was going on back here, but we had to keep the mission up front.
You were over there putting your life on line, along with many other young, let's say, Southern black men.
Yes.
And yet you were coming back to a town that you felt didn't really want to treat you right.
Exactly. And that took some, I would never compare myself with Jack Robinson and people who went and who endured so much so that I would have the opportunity. But he had to, not he had to, but he was a perfect guy to it, like Rosa Parks. They had to have the perfect people who were able to take that type of, if you will, discrimination and that type of degradation and still maintain their humanity, if you will, and not getting so angry that they want to kill everyone. So but being able to take the anger and channel it in a more positive way.
Talk about progress. Pastor Warnock is our U.S. Senator. Now, what did you think about that?
That was amazing. I think that was, and you know, of course, no one, had you taken a bet 3 years ago, no one would have bet that that would have happened. But that's the progress, and that's what the political process can do. And if you get involved, when people say, "Oh, I don't like politics," just vote, because everything that happens to you is a political decision at the end of the day.
You looking ahead in the book, any projecting the future?
I mean, in terms of my future?
Or anybody's future, the state's future.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Macon's future.
I talk about Macon's future. I think Macon, we have got to, you know, and here again, we have a new administration. I wish them well.
Seems like he's getting off on the right foot.
I wish them well, but we've got to grow this town. We've got to find a way, and you know, we did the best we could by renovating, try to get people to move back in and so forth. But Macon, we are this donut, and all around us we have growth. Warner Robins has been growing like gangbusters forever. Even Gray, Jones County, everyone has an increase in population. Our population has been stagnant.
They've been feeding off of Macon.
Yes. Yes, exactly. But for the last 30 years, our population has been stagnant, 30, 40 years. And we got to find a way to increase our population. If not, we'll continue to have too few people having to carry the load in terms of paying taxes and things of that nature.
Well, maybe we can all get together and help Lester and help the BIB Commission this job this time.
I will do whatever I can to help them, but there are a couple of things that I'm against that he's put out, but I won't talk about it here.
We'll say this for one of your programs when you take over this again. Okay?
Exactly. But I wish them well.
Oh.
And I wish you well. Thanks again, Ron, for sitting at this desk and informing people all over the world as to what's going on in Macon, Georgia.
Good to have you back.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, folks, for joining us on our Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm Ron Wildman here at WMUB TV.